In Activity 4, Wind Direction, students use a windsock to determine the direction of the wind. They first learn about and discuss the phenomenon of wind, and then discover that wind direction can change during the day and from one day to the next. You will need the following materials from the kit: Activity Sheet 4, Parts A, B, and C, plastic bags, 13 cm by 13 cm pieces of corrugated cardboard, wooden dowels, thumbtacks, compass, ruler, roll of string, roll of masking tape, roll of wire, and a pair of wire cutters. You will also need to provide black crayons, pairs of scissors, electric fan, small hammer, and matches. To prepare for Session 1, make a copy of Activity Sheet 4, Parts A through C for each student. Set up a fan where all students will be able to feel its effects, and open a classroom door and windows so students can feel the breeze. Poke a hole in the center of a piece of corrugated cardboard large enough to push the dowel through. For each team of 2, prepare one 50 cm long wire and 4 30 cm long strings. Each team of 2 will also need a plastic bag, one cardboard square with a hole, one black crayon, one dowel, one pair of scissors, one thumbtack, one length of wire, 4 lengths of string, and 4 pieces of tape. For this session, you will also need a small hammer, a book of matches, and a compass. To begin Session 1, turn on the fan and inform students that in this activity, they're going to study the wind, or the air that is moving across the Earth's surface. Ask students, what does wind look like? Help students understand that you cannot see the wind. Then ask, if you cannot see wind, how do you know it's there? Encourage students to use their senses in their answers. For example, they may respond that they can feel the wind, or see the wind move things like tree branches or flags, or hear the wind as it rustles leaves or rattles windows. Ask students, what do you think causes the wind to blow? Accept all reasonable answers. Remind students that a blanket of air, called the atmosphere, surrounds Earth, and that in the previous activity, they learned that as the sun moves across the sky, it heats up Earth's surface and the surrounding air. Help students understand that as air gets warmer, it rises and gets replaced by surrounding cooler air. The air in the atmosphere is constantly moving, and we experience this movement of air as wind. Ask students, how do we know that warm air rises? Some students may have noticed the temperature difference between the attics and basements of houses. The attic is generally much warmer than the basement. To demonstrate that warm air rises, light a match and then blow it out. Note to exercise extreme caution when using matches in the classroom. Ask students, what do you notice about the smoke? Students should have observed that the smoke rose. Then ask, why does it rise? Help students understand that the flame heated the air around the match, and that this air rose and carried smoke particles with it. Next, encourage students to remember if they've ever gone bike riding on a windy day, and ask, is it easier to ride into the wind or ride with the wind at your back? Help students understand that it is easier to ride with the wind at your back because the wind can push you forward. Then ask, how could you tell which way the wind was blowing before leaving the house? Students may respond that they could watch the clouds move across the sky or observe which way the trees lean. Inform students that in this activity, they're going to make a simple weather instrument called a windsock, an open-ended sock, usually made of nylon, which is mounted on a pole outdoors. When the wind blows, it fills the sock and makes it stand straight out, indicating the direction in which the wind is blowing. Explain that windsocks are often found at airports and seaports. Next, distribute Activity Sheet 4, Parts A and B, along with the materials. Review the instructions on the activity sheets, and guide students through each step as they build their windsocks. First, have students make 4 cuts, each 3 centimeters long, around the opening of the bag. Then, cut a small hole in the bottom of the bag. Students should then bend the piece of wire to make a circle and twist the ends together. Instruct students to tie the 4 pieces of string to the wire and place the wire ring in the opening of the bag. Then, students should tape down the flaps around the wire. Make sure the string goes where the slits are. Next, have students tie the ends of the strings together and poke a thumbtack through the knot. Then, students should push the thumbtack into one end of the dowel. Tell students to label the cardboard square with cardinal directions: north, northeast, east, southeast, south, southwest, west, and northwest. Finally, have them push the other end of the dowel through the hole in the cardboard. When students have finished building their windsocks, take them outdoors to a nearby open field and instruct them to push the dowel into the ground several feet apart from one another. They should then use a compass to determine which direction is north, and then rotate the cardboard squares so that the N points north. Students should then determine the direction the wind is blowing by noting where their windsock is pointing. Instruct students to record their observations on Activity Sheet 4, Part C, and repeat the procedure twice a day, in the early morning and then late afternoon for 3 days. At the end of the third day, have students complete questions 1 through 3 on Activity Sheet 4, Part C. To prepare for Session 2, students will need their activity sheets from Session 1. To begin Session 2, discuss students' results and ask, what did you notice about the wind over the last 3 days? Students will most likely respond that the wind direction changed from morning to afternoon and from one day to the next. Then ask, what do you think caused the wind direction to change? Students should recall from Session 1 that wind is created when air is heated, rises, and is replaced by cooler air. Encourage them to remember that in Activity 3, they learned that temperature changes over the course of the day. Inform students that wind direction changes when air temperature changes, and that winds are named for the direction from which they blow. For example, an east wind blows from east to west, and a north wind blows from north to south. Help students complete the last column on Activity Sheet 4, Part C. Then remind them that wind direction can be determined by watching the clouds move. Ask students, how can knowing the wind direction help you predict weather? Students should respond that wind carries weather from one place to another. For example, if the wind is blowing from west to east, the east may soon have weather conditions similar to those in the west. Then ask, what else could you tell about the wind from looking at your windsock? Students may mention that a limp windsock indicates little or no wind, while a fully extended windsock indicates a stronger breeze. Let students know that in the next activity, they will learn more about wind strength. To conclude Session 2, keep the windsocks intact for future use and store them where they will not get tangled up. You may also want to remove the cardboard squares and store them separately. Then wrap each plastic bag around its dowel and secure them with a rubber band. For science background, reinforcement activities, curriculum connections, and information about the Delta Science Reader, please consult your DSM Teacher's Guide.